And I used to call them the welfare calls. It wasn't just the sheer calls, it was a call where he would ask some questions, how you doing, how's your kids, how's your wife? And you would wait for, is there anything else? And then that would be it. He just wanted to check in on you.
Und alle seine Wege in den Schuldauen, und der alte Rebbe ist getan den Talis, das ist der Priester der Malki Beth in Yom Kippurim, und er Wege installiert in Ecksteppel in der Heimhof, und hat dort getan, und die in Jonim gedreht ist, hoch nach Lahachis es nachschaut. Was mir versteht sich, Adagi von Aiden, die Frau bei Yom Kippurim, a viele Jitzte. Alachas kam in jene Jahren in einer kleinen Stätte, wo der alte Rebbe gewinnt der Magis Mischori. Alachas kam der alte Rebbe allein, was der fühlt in seinem Gewichet. Wie Yehuda Levin, als es kann sein, dass die Jeldes, was gefühlt hat, wie Ktei Hoir, soll mit der Ruhe, was die Bnei Bayis, einen in Schul in Kippur, soll sie bleiben unter der Michael Maschke, was sie da haben. Was auch das ist der Linie, was ständig in Leila Marzilus ist, was hat mir einen Geschmack im Ton hat sie ergeben.
It was the end of the year, it was my bar mitzvah, and I was set to have a bar mitzvah party on Thursday. I don't know what the date was. I know the Hebrew date now. It was Beis Sivan, and on Monday, my sister had to call all of the parents of all my classmates and tell them to cancel because my father's mother was really ill, and he had to leave town to go visit her, and the party wasn't going to work out, which it was devastating as a 13-year-old, and there's nothing I can do about it. You know, it wasn't as important as other things going on in life. But the following day was Tuesday, and in the middle of the day, Rabbi Raichik showed up in my class with pies of pizza, and I found out recently, my mother told me that he had actually called the principal and arranged to block out X amount of time from our schedule so that we would be able to sit and have a bar mitzvah party. All of it on his own accord. I had no clue about it.
A few days before Pesach, the original Pesach, the first one of Corona, Rabbi Raichik called me, and he said he put some books that he had about his father, the famous Shadar book, he put them downstairs in front of my door, and he asked me if I'd be able to go deliver them. And he explained that there was a 3-day Yom Tov coming up because Pesach that year was Thursday and Friday, and then it was Shabbos. And there were people in the community that live alone. They wouldn't be able to go to shul. They wouldn't even be able to be invited to people's house for a seder, etc., due to the situation at the time. And he was worried, what are those people going to do home alone for 3 days? And therefore he asked me if I could go and deliver those books for him so people would have simply what to do over a 3-day Yom Tov. That's how much he was thinking about them in advance.
I'm a ger, I'm a convert. And since we start coming to them, they tell us, now we're gonna adopt you. Now, just like they took over. But my wife and I, we really felt the connection, since then it's like everything took off. Marriage. When we were married, we had problems having a child, and he helped us through. He helped us to tell us to ask the Rebbe for a blessing, for bracha, and things went through. The fruit of that is my Yosef Yitzchak, and I'm thankful. I'm very thankful to HaKadosh Baruch Hu and the Rebbe, and I'm very immensely thankful to Rabbi Raichik and to the Rebbes.
My father, Sholom, passed away on a Motzei Shabbos. And he was in Cedar Sinai for about 2.5, 3 weeks before he passed away. And, prior to my father going to the hospital for his final stay, he wasn't well for some time, and Rabbi Raichik lived down the block. He would call constantly to find out, how are you doing? And when it became difficult for my father to walk, Rabbi Raichik would even come down the block and come upstairs and pay a visit to him. But then once my father ended up in the hospital, things deteriorated and things became very challenging. And obviously my father wasn't taking phone calls. He wasn't capable of taking phone calls. And my mother, myself, it was not so simple. We were spending nights in the hospital, and there was limited communication, shall we say, with Rabbi Raichik. On Shabbos evening, or Shabbos afternoon, things took a turn for the worse. And ultimately, about a half hour after Shabbos, or 45 minutes after Shabbos, my father was nifter. But about 10 minutes or 15 minutes before Yitzias Neshama, this is literally a half hour after Havdalah, who shows up in the ICU? Rabbi Raichik. And he comes up, and I see him there at the ICU, and I said, Rabbi Raichik's mamish, we were aware, it's final moments. Like, how did you know to come? And he said, I just had a feeling, he says. I haven't been in touch with you for a while, I haven't heard anything, and a whole Shabbos passed, I didn't see you in shul, and I had a feeling that it's just, I need to be there. And as soon as Shabbos was over, he got into the car, drove down to Cedars, and just that heartziking feel of paying attention, of being present, enabled for him to be there with us in those final moments, which was something that was extremely special, but again underscores his concern and care to the last,
Being in the community, of course I knew who Rabbi Raichik was, you see him in shul, I saw him in shul sometimes talk, I heard him talk at Bringans, but I didn't really know Rabbi Raichik, we weren't friends or anything. Until one day, I get a phone call. Hello, it's Rabbi Raichik. I hear you can help me with something. I said, sure, what do you need help with? He said, the phone lines in my office are staticky. Maybe you could help me fix the phone lines. Something's not working right, I have lines, they're getting crossed. I said, sure, let me come over and see what's going on. So I came over to the office, I helped him fix his phone lines, and said, thank you. I went on my way, he said, let's be in touch. Okay, cool. Several weeks later, a month later or something, it's another issue, something with the phone lines. The company canceled something, switched the lines around. So I get a call again. Hello, it's Rabbi Raichik. Can you come help me with the phone lines? I said, sure, no problem. I stopped on my way home from work. I helped him out, something got crossed, something was disconnected with the phone company. And then at the end of the visit, he said, thank you so much. Let's be in touch, but let's really be in touch. It shouldn't only be, when we need to fix something and we need to do some work together. So I said, sure, for sure, we'll be in touch, like you say to everyone else when you leave. Several weeks later, I get another phone call. Hello, it's Rabbi Raichik. I said, something wrong with the phone line? Something wrong in the office with the wiring? He says, no, I just want to see how you're doing. I said, well, I'm doing fine. He said, how's the family? How's your parents? Everything's going fine. How's your bubby? My bubby just recently moved to town. He knew. He says, everything's fine. I said, anything? Nothing in the phone lines, office? He said, no, everything's fine. I just want to see how you're doing. From then on, every few weeks, every month or two, and every special occasion, maybe Rosh Chodesh, Erev Yom Tif, and even sometimes just on a regular day, a regular afternoon, I would get a call from Rabbi Raichik.
I remember when I first moved down, he called me and he said, I want to come to your house for a meeting, and I wasn't sure what it was. You and your wife, obviously me and my wife, and he sat us down and he actually introduced himself, and it was I've never got that experience before. I lived in Crown Heights before. It was a really beautiful experience, and throughout the years, Rabbi Raichik really showed a lot of love to us. We had shiurim with him every week, Wednesday night, and he'd call us to confirm, make sure the shiur is on time, and he loved it, and we loved him. It was really so beautiful. when we'd ask questions, he'd get really involved in it. He'd be like, oh, that's a great question. It was a really beautiful, beautiful experience. With me, having that meeting with Rabbi Raichik wasn't the only one. He had meetings with a lot of different, with old and young guys when they moved down here. He'd sit down with us and discuss. I remember he went around looking at mezuzahs, making sure the mezuzahs were put in the right areas of each house. It was in the house. It was really, really beautiful. So he really loved us, and we loved him. And throughout the years, it just that connection really grew. We really grew. The young guys with Rabbi Raichik. It was so beautiful.
To me, fond memories I have of Rabbi Raichik. Rabbi Raichik actually showed up to every single wedding for my family members. And that was, let's see, Montreal, Boston. For me, I was the first one to get married in my family. That was actually in Crown Heights. And every Simcha we had. Every so often, Rabbi Raichik wouldn't see me in shul for a week, maybe a couple of days. I always get a phone call from him. I'm telling him, how are you? How's everybody? He'd always remember everybody in our family. My daughters, my wife, he'd ask about my mother, he'd ask everything. And there were times actually my father wasn't doing well. He was in San Diego. And it was unbelievable that our Raichik would actually show up every single week. He would come to San Diego. And now we're talking about a 2.5 hour drive each way, depending on traffic. So to me, that's somebody who was special. It's part of our family. He put himself in front of everybody else. And I don't know how he found the time to take care of the community and come and see every single person and think about every single person.
You know, I knew that if I'm going to Israel, if I'm traveling somewhere, I would have to tell him, because otherwise he'd be worried when he didn't see me on Wednesday, and he'd be calling me on Thursdays, you know, asking if everything's okay. So I had to kind of check in. He kind of flipped the whole rabbi concept over in my mind, where in my mind it was, you go to the rabbi. And in this relationship, it was, he's going to you, he's caring about you, you're on his mind. And it was a very special relationship to have.
Shortly after I moved to Los Angeles in 2010, I was in Levi Yitzchak, and Rabbi Raichik came over to me and to say hello, as opposed to me going over to him. I also remember at one point during COVID, beginning of COVID lockdowns, we were all stuck at home, and Rabbi Raichik called me for no reason other than just to say hello, see how I'm doing, see how my family's doing. And that made a major impression. I know that he was obviously dealing with a lot with the community and everything else going on, but he still took the time to call me, and he genuinely wanted to see how my family's doing, and that meant a lot to me.
One of the children needed a medication, was close to Pesach, and we called to ask about it, if it's better to use a pill, to use a liquid, how it's going to work with Pesach. And he gave the answer to the question, clear answer. And right before Pesach, he called to find out how the baby is doing and if they're feeling better with the medication. And everyone knows a Rav before Pesach is very, very busy. And nevertheless, he took the time to call us and to find out how the baby is doing and if everything's okay.
18 years ago, my wife was having difficulty walking. She was dragging her foot, and after some evaluations and some MRI, we found out that it was a tumor. Baruch Hashem, it was benign. It was kept. We scheduled the surgery for Lag Baimer. We kept it very quiet. Only family members knew, and we let the Raichiks know. Baruch Hashem, when my wife came into the room, a few hours later, Rabbi Raichik's there in the hospital, and I couldn't believe it. He walked in like family, because we had no family here. And you know, he's not just a rabbi, he's family.
I called him for all different questions that came up on shlichus, which are not always so predictable. I remember the classic line that I remember is he would, after I tell him what I'm struggling with, he would say, all right, he would do the, and after the krechts, he would say, all right, this is what we're gonna do. I remember thinking then, the whole expression, this is what we're gonna do, this wasn't his problem, this was my problem. He's not living in my life. I was running my thing, I was doing my things. And the way he almost absorbed it, like it became his thing, it always made you feel very comfortable. It's like, you know, it's our problem, this is what we're gonna do. You're gonna tell them this, you're gonna tell them that. And he was like, he was guiding me, but I always felt like, and it was very common language.
Baruch Hashem, I had a long journey meeting my wife and marrying my wife, and my father-in-law, who lives in Sydney, Australia, was really close to Rabbi Raichik. And Rabbi Raichik was very involved in my shidduch. And there was a few people involved in my shidduch, but nobody was involved with the empathy and really recognizing what I was going through, being involved there. So I owe him a tremendous amount of gratitude.
I have the schus to live right across the street from the Raichiks. And I had the privilege to walk with Rabbi Raichik every Friday night and Shabbos day to and from shul for the last couple of years. I enjoyed many private conversations with him. Oftentimes, I would share with him things that trouble me. And just by talking to him and the way he would listen, you felt like automatically most of the worries were alleviated. He didn't just care. He didn't just listen. I felt he was in it with me.
After Rosh Hashanah, when my wife and I came down with COVID, so every 2 days I got a text or a phone call from Rabbi Raichik. Just, how are you? My wife, the same thing from Rabbi Raichik. And to me, that's real caring, and that's something that I want to continue, and I've learned such a valuable lesson.
We were not the guest. We were not the guest on Shabbos. We were not the guest on Pesach. We were the family. We were part of the family.
The way Rabbi Raichik chazes Simcha, you knew he was there. The way you call him for halacha, he wasn't answering an halacha in Shulchan Aruch, but he was answering your question and what you had to deal with.
You know, thinking back as a 13-year-old, to have the bar mitzvah party canceled, which, you know, I had envisioned and planned and thought about exactly how I wanted it to be, it was just crushing. You know, today as an adult, I realize, okay, not a big deal. But at that time in my life, it was the most important thing, and to have been down in the dumps, and to have, I didn't have a particularly close relationship with Rabbi Raichik, but for him to know what was going on in my life and to think and care enough to take that action and to go out of his way, not only to buy the pizza, to think about it, but to call ahead and make sure that we as a class had that time blocked off so it wouldn't be rushed, and to spend his time during his day to make sure that I had something that he felt was important, I think speaks to the character and to who Rabbi Raichik was.
Das ist sicher der kleine Linie, was Chassidus hat zugetan. Als mit gucken die drauf, was mit der Dynastie Chassidus an der gelegen in den Jahren Amukim bejährt. Weil das ist der Pnimis Hatere gefragt nach am hat es gedacht, da redet gerne in der Hasbore von Chochmer Wiener Tag. Is a Vater in gelegt dem Dogosh, hat soll sein der Linie von Tona Teva Aiden Begashmi oder Beruchnis wie der Wort von Baal Shem Tov. Ist das eine Sinaskeya, a jeder ist dem Amodi und Matzol in der Einzelne voller Kochis, kommen werden gestellt für Adam in Israel, als soll Sachen verbringen als seine Elam habe. Der Fall ist über Kommentar nach Teva treten nieden.
When we speak about Ahavas Yisroel, the Rebbe stood for hours giving dollars and answering people, but Ruchnis and Gashmis, everyone individually. Not talking a big Simcha to everyone. And that's what we have to learn when we go away, to help another Yid, either physically, spiritually, and not think about global individuals. The Rebbe ran Meisters, the Rebbe was involved in how the yeshiva should run, how the Chabad houses, Klal Yisrael. The Rebbe spoke about many issues with Snegei to Klal Yisrael. At the same time, he was a Rebbe of Klal Yisrael, he was a Rebbe of every individual Yid. what they need physically or spiritually. So the same thing, what we can learn is we're not a Rebbe, we're Chassidim, but we have to give off our time of the Ahavas soul to an individual person. To an individual person could be a phone call to ask him how he is. Sometimes they need a little bit help. Sometimes they need guidance and so forth, just to show that we care for someone. That's a very big, caring is a very big thing.